train is arriving at Leningradsky railway station, Moscow, the capital of Russia. Please don't forget your luggage or belongings. We ask you to inform the crew about any unattended items. After the train comes to a complete stop, please use the illuminated green button for opening the door of your car and alighting. Goodbye. We hope to welcome you on board again.
So we landed, by the way, at the Leningrad station, still called Leningrad, even though St. Petersburg is, you know, they're much more communist here, and you'll see that it's a very different city. Much bigger streets, because Stalin wanted to make it an ideal communist city, and he knocked down so much of the medieval, so much of the more intimate parts of the city. So the only part really left is around the Red Square, and that you will experience a little bit tonight, and have it give you a chance to eat some dinner, see the GOM. You'll see the GOM is the oldest shopping mall in the world. And there are 3 floors, one very expensive one, first floor, second floor a little bit less expensive, and then the 3rd floor is pretty reasonable. And there are 3 or 4 cafeterias, and you sit on balconies, so it's pretty much fun. So it's a nice thing to eat there tonight. So, and you know, you just leave your things on the bus. When we get down there now, maybe 10-15 minutes, we're going to get off, all of us, and then we walk up together to the GOM. I have my newspaper here, and just slowly walk up to the GOM. But you know, you'll be back to the Red Square with a local guide tomorrow, but the GOM is fun to see more than once, and very convenient for us. But around 8 o'clock, we're going to leave the Red Square, and then we're going to see the metro. Scaffolding. See the building here to the right? This is the world famous, infamous KGB. This is the only building in Moscow where you can actually see Siberia from the basement. This was feared by everyone. 15 minutes. So this is a bit of central Moscow. If you look into the right here now, this is but what's a little bit older, and technical museum on the left-hand side, a bit of a national romantic style, Russians, and some churches, and one of the famous Stalin skyscrapers in front of you here. Look at another beautiful Russian church on the left. Another beautiful church coming up ahead of you here. It used to be the city of 800 churches, you know, and now little by little coming back, some of them. Used to be a very famous hotel there on the left-hand side, big, enormous, one of the biggest hotels in the world, called the Russia Hotel. But 10 years ago they decided to knock it down, and it's still just an empty space today. And you know, the land they want to sell it, but it's too expensive. No one wants to buy it, not even Donald Trump. He was very old, but built 35, and this will be the revolutionary station. It's actually the first station ever built. And they call this the metropolis and the metro line of Lenin. That's what it says up there. And this station then is called the theater station or the revolutionary station, because as we come down, we will see all these revolutionaries in one.
Really?
Which side do we get off?
Did Sosie and Kev get in?
I don't know.
Hang on to someone.
They got on?
I haven't seen them. Maybe on the other one.
Everyone is successful. Everyone is happy. Everyone is doing what they're supposed to do. And so that very often in the middle of it all, work and the other
is over there talking to the masses. The president was talking. Everything is beautiful. Except here, you can see a very handsome man with the moustache. And he's the only because they didn't want to destroy the beautiful mosaic. So he stands there and he looks at Lenin over there, and maybe you remember that they didn't like each other. And Lenin said very early on that whatever you do, make sure that the Stalin doesn't become the party secretary. Because you know he had that leaders. This is called Novodevichy, new merchant yard. You know, up here used to be a lot of shops in the old days. So very, very decorative and a very beautiful mosaic. Very, very colourful, and then you'll see that there are, like in the other stations, you know, small propaganda medallions as we walk down with figures, and then we're going to come to one on the high, like very
This is the view from the Radisson Hotel.
entering the square of Belarusian railway station. It's here on the right hand side. This green and white building on the right is Belarusian railway station. And on the left hand side you can see the Church of Jesus Christ, and behind the church there is a modern complex of offices, and there are many cafes in that complex as well. Just as in this square, the square of Belarusian railway station, there are cafes and restaurants all around. Well, this part of Tverskaya Street has numerous shops. Some of them are clothes shops, and there's also a very nice delicatessen a little bit at the back. And now we are entering the city of Moscow, this square of Moscow City Hall. To the left you can see the statue to the founder of Moscow, Prince Yuri Dolgoruki. He's shown in such a way as if he's pointing at the place where Moscow is to be founded. And then you can see some buildings which are decorated with dark brown granite. This granite has a story of its own. When the Nazis approached Moscow, Hitler was so sure of his success that he ordered this granite from Sweden. He planned to level down the whole city, turn it into a big lake, and decorate the banks of the lake with the dark brown granite as the symbol of the Nazi victory over Russia. But his hopes failed, and the granite was used to decorate apartment houses in the street. And we are coming to the one of the main squares, Manege Square. And on the left-hand side, you can see the building of the State Duma. Duma in Russian means to think, so this is the lower house of our parliament. The members of the parliament are supposed to think for us, which doesn't always happen, you know. That's where it is, the Duma. And then further on the left-hand side, you can see the theatrical square of Moscow with 4 theaters situated here, and the main one of them is the building with the columns. It's the Bolshoi Theater, world famous opera and ballet theater. That's the facade decorated with the quadriga of Apollo. The new stage of the Bolshoi is at the back on the left of the Bolshoi. So this is the Bolshoi Theater, and now as we drive further, on the right-hand side you can see the Metropole Hotel, which was built in 1903, and it's beautifully decorated with mosaics on the facade. Further on the right is the passage to the parallel street. It is called Tretyakov Passage, with very elegant museum of Russian art in the city, and even one of the best in the country. And now we are coming into Lubyanka Square, and the name of the square sometimes is associated with a building on the left-hand side, which is the former KGB office, the one in the scaffolds with the clock on the facade, just behind this flower bed. That's the former KGB, Committee for State Security. Now it's called FSB, Federal Security Service, but some of the same people still working there. Then on the left-hand side, you can see the building in the neo-Russian style, the building of the Polytechnical Museum. It was built as a museum every night from the 1st of September through the 8th of September. Now, from this bridge, you can get a perfect view of Moscow Kremlin on the right, and on the left, in a distance, you can see one of Moscow's skyscrapers. This one is an apartment house. There are 7 buildings of this type in Moscow. Out of 7, 2 are apartment houses. And you can see a beautiful view of the Kremlin to the right, the fortress from which Moscow started. And now we are crossing the Moscow River, the river that gave the name to the city. The world-famous St. Basil's Cathedral. So you can see the wall of the Kremlin, the wall of the ancient fortress. This wall dates from the 15th to the 17th centuries. And you can see from the embankment also the main cathedrals of the Kremlin, where the Tsars were crowned, baptized and buried. And also from here you can see the Grand Kremlin Palace, the yellow building with the green roof, which is now used for ceremonious purposes, but was built as the residential palace of the Tsars. Also closer to the corner there is the building of the museum that is called the Armory Museum, where the treasures of the Kremlin are kept. And we are going to visit that museum with you as well. So ladies and gentlemen, very soon we shall stop opposite a beautiful cathedral, which is called the Cathedral of Jesus Christ the Savior. This cathedral has very unusual history. Initially, the cathedral was built in the 19th century to mark the victory over Napoleon. And on the left, you can see an old building, an old mansion of the 18th century. This mansion was once a private house of the man whose last name was Pashkov. So it's called Pashkov's house. Pashkov didn't have any heirs. He left his house to the city of Moscow, and a library was housed there. And later the library was enlarged, and today This building, as well as all the buildings around here, are part of the National Russian Library. In front of the library, on the left-hand side, there is the statue of Fyodor Dostoevsky, the famous Russian writer. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to get off here. And this is MANEGE Square. Quite often, newlyweds on their wedding day come to MANEGE Square to have pictures taken. We'll walk into Red Square all together. So here we are getting off, but the bus cannot park here. Sergei will leave and will meet us later on the opposite side. The fact is that beginning from the 1st of September until the 8th of September, we are going to have a military tattoo In Moscow, in Red Square, you could see probably yesterday a big stage in the middle of the square. So there will be representatives of 15 countries performing in that concert.
The word Kremlin means a fortress or a city. And there are many Kremlins in Russia. Every old Russian city starts from those
Не бегай по траве.
And the cannon was placed on these wheels, which were made 300 years later, and the cannon balls were made just to illustrate how big the caliber of the cannon is. The cannon weighs 40 tons. Its caliber is 35 inches, and it can fire. If it does, it would fire with many small cannonballs, that would be spread apart, not with such huge cannonballs that might make the barrel explode. Each of these cannonballs weighs about 1 ton. So the cannon never fired, but it can fire. And you see it's aiming at the building of President's administration. It's the biggest bell in the world. We saw the biggest cannon in the world that never fired. This is the biggest bell in the world, and guess what? It never rang, right you are. This bell was made in the 18th century in 1737. Now we'll go to the oldest part of the Kremlin, the Cathedral Square.
Je vous en prie, bon. Je vous en prie, venez par ici.
Inside the Cathedral of the Assumption and admire it from inside, not because inside. Here, please look at your neighbors, your roommates. Yes, please. Okay. Good. The October Revolution of 1917. In the middle of the square there is the statue to Vladimir Lenin as the head of the revolution, and from here starts the street which is called Lenin Avenue. There were many statues of Lenin in Moscow. Nowadays not so many have been preserved, bless you. And as we turn, we are approaching a very nice district of Moscow, the famous Gorky Park, the park of amusements that was laid out here in 1929. You can see the park on the left. It's like Central Park in New York. Gorky Park is named after the Soviet writer Maxim Gorky. In this park there are all kinds of events taking place, especially today on the eve of the birthday of Moscow. There are concerts on the stages of the park. There are man-made lakes here where one can hire a boat. There are fountains, Wi-Fi today, and it looks very pretty with flowers. In winter time, the alleys of the park are covered with ice, and people come to skate here and to ski in this park. There are all kinds of amusements for children. A very pretty street at the time. At the beginning of the 20th century, the gardens were cut down. Some of the buildings were destroyed to make the street wide, and today you see how wide the street is. Can hold 12 cars abreast in its widest places, 6 lanes on each side. And although you don't see much of a garden here anymore, the name of the street is still the same, Gardens Ring or Gardens Belt. Street of Old Arbat appeared in the 16th century when it was the limit of the city, and Arabic merchants inhabited that district. Later on, Russian nobility settled down in that district, and each house in the district was designed by a different architect. So it's interesting not just only to walk along the main street, Old Arbat, but also through the side streets to look at the old architecture of the 19th century. And there are many shops in that street. In the times of Mikhail Gorbachev, it was turned into a pedestrian street, and it was like the Orator's Corner, where the people came to make political speeches. We shall visit the street on the right-hand side, which is called TROITSKAYA, which is called Old Arbat Street. It's a pedestrian street, which you see to the right, with numerous cafes and restaurants, and sometimes you can see musicians playing in the street and artists painting in the street. So it's quite a nice street where you can see the life of the city. From here, both old and new Arbat begin.
And then you sprinkle the sea salt on it, and then you drizzle chocolate over the top. And the cookie is, I think it's ground up pecans, flour.
So like sea salt caramel cookie on the internet, you think I can find it?
I don't know, but if you give me your email.
On the left-hand side, you can see the monument to the unity of the front and the rear during the Second World War.
She lived a long life. At the end of her life, she was professor of ballet at Moscow Ballet Academy, and Her hands were as if they were made of rubber, so soft. They looked like the real wings of the swan. The next monument is that of the director of Moscow Circus. You are going to the circus today, and those of you going to the circus will see the monument of this man next to the circus as well. He was the director of the circus, Yuri Nikulin, and also he was a clown and an excellent comedian. It's
the most interesting way to do it.
Of the world, showing all the countries where they visited, all the dances of different countries that they performed were marked here. And you look at the dates of his life. 1906, 2000, Inspector General, the dead souls, and he exposed the corruption, bribery, all kinds of vices of the people. And if you read his books today, you are amazed how contemporary they are, because human nature hasn't changed. A lot of time has passed, but human nature is the same. So this is the tomb of Nikolai Gogol. There are tombs of two generals, General Gorbachev and General Populous, and then a lieutenant, Malalikin, who was a pilot, and whose rule, when his plane was burning already, his rule really patriotic people and loved Russia. And it was only in the years of Mikhail Gorbachev that Mikhail Gorbachev wrote them a letter saying that if they wanted, they could regain their citizenship, country, to which they immediately agreed. That the Soviet Union split up into independent states. Instead of one country, the Soviet Union, there appeared 16 independent states, and the Russian Federation was one of them. The Soviet flag was the red flag with the hammer and hospital, and she was very clear. You see, while she was alive and when she was in office, she was not really very popular because many people thought she had too much influence on her husband, and she was interfering in the politics. We find the tomb of the Soviet Russian general Alexander Lebed. Alexander Lebed fought in Afghanistan, he fought in Chechnya, and he later signed peace treaty with Chechnya. Sculptor to make a monument on Monday. And his son did so, and the sculptor made the monument, which is of two slabs of marble, white and black, as the contrast of his activities, but his face is in the black color. You can only make a guess what it means. Buried next to him is his wife, Nina, and then their son, who died during an air battle in 1943 during the Second World War, and his grandson, also Nikita. He was a journalist, a very good journalist and historian, but he had a very weak heart and he died of a heart. So this is the tomb of Nikita.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we shall now go to see this convent. It's hidden by the trees, that's why we call it hidden treasure. And it is one of the masterpieces of the Russian Orthodox Church architecture. It's listed with UNESCO, so it's a very romantic place. Sometimes you can see newlyweds here taking pictures because it's a very, very beautiful place by the lake.
actually we're crossing the Green Army.
And you will see an interesting monument which was a present to children of the Soviet Union from Barbara Bush. And remember, I promised to show to you the White House of Russia, the house of Russian government that was twice surrounded with barricades in its recent history. So now we are approaching the Russian White House. In 1991, President Gorbachev was having a vacation in the Crimea in the south of the Soviet Union. All of a sudden on the TV there appeared a provisional committee headed by Vice President that claimed that Gorbachev was deadly sick, and they were taking over all the power. You can see the White House now on the right hand side. Then the White House was the seat of President Yeltsin, who was president of one of the republics of the Soviet Union, Russian Federation. So nobody could understand what was going on, and the people came to the White House to find out from President Yeltsin what happened. The people surrounded. So you can see here the triumphal arch, ladies and gentlemen. And then you can see on the left-hand side the memorial dedicated to the Second World War. The memorial was opened here in 1985. And you can see the museum of the Second World War. That is the semicircular building. If you want to take a picture, we can make a stop for picture taking. Do you want to take a picture of this complex? Yes. So we'll make a stop not far from here in the street, and you will be able to take a picture of this complex. You can see the obelisk. Every 10 centimeters of the obelisk correspond to 1 day of the war for the Soviet Union. The war lasted for 1,418 days, and the obelisk is 140. Olympic Stadium for 40,000 spectators, and it's not only the sports events that take place here, but all kinds of rock concerts and other events.
At 8 we're going to go out to the countryside, to Zagorsk, going against all the cars.
especially for this monastery. This is the monastery of the Holy Trinity. So now let us see the Russian
Winning run.
Если кто подходит на половину, туда все собираются. 10:30. Самый дальний. А слева?
Живопись была первоначально выполнена в 17 веке.
The painting comes from the 17th century initially.
И, конечно, постоянно поновлялось, последнее поновление было все да, стены, да.
I mean the wall.
Здесь находятся мощи святых, слева мощи
There are
Максима
relics of the
Грека.
saints here. We can see on the left-hand side the relics of Saint Maximus.
Это ученый муж, который приглашен был в Россию.
He was brought to this church from one of the churches in Moscow that was destroyed. We can see the plaster work on the walls, which is gilded and covered with silver. And again, the main event in the history of the church, when the Virgin appeared to Saint Sergius and promised him to give her protection to this monastery during the whole existence of this monastery. And the Virgin really protected